So, Jay Francis, welcome to Squash World. You're on the spot.
Oh dear.
Tell us your past. I know a little about you from the forum, but I'm mostly ignorant. So tell us more.
Right. So grew up in England, north of England. Father and mother, professionals. Dad was a great coach as well, sort of the Jonah Barrington era. So I'm a dad for people out there watching. Clive Francis, um, very difficult man, but in my eyes, probably still the best coach I've ever known. My mum was a fantastic athlete, and she played at the highest level in England as well. Grew up playing squash from the little cut-off racket, walking around. Played the England junior levels. Was probably too busy with numerous sports to end up fully committing to playing full time, and it's also something I didn't want to do. I loved the coaching side. I loved being involved, and I also had to put a roof over my own head and put food on the table. So I was coaching, and then I started working, and then I ended up back at university. Got a good club when I came out of university in the Midlands called the Tollgate in Stoke. Been there a couple of years, and a good friend of mine went over to Holland working for a consortium of clubs, and they asked him if he knew anybody else. It was the right time, and I went over in, I think, 97 to Holland. Went to a club which looked pretty big on paper, 9 courts, gone to 13, but it was very quiet, very poor levels, nothing really going on. And I ended up being there for 18 years at one club. Ended up with 18 courts and 32 league teams, internal box pools with hundreds of people. Lived above the club for 4 years, which some of the pros that came and lived with me for a while will have told you how much fun it was living above the club. Moved out and stayed there for 18 years. An opportunity arose in Canada, and it was sort of the right time. I didn't feel I could go any further with where I was in Holland, and moved over to Canada to a member-owned club that has hosts a big PSA event every year. It was good. Met the love of my life, married a Canadian woman. I have a son or a stepson now because of that, who started playing squash not long after I arrived. And he's now just starting out with his girlfriend, starting out on their PSA venture just before COVID hit. So that's pretty cool to have a stepson who we get on brilliant. And I'll be thankful to move into Canada for that. Things didn't work out long term at the club where I was. It wasn't what I expected, or the environment wasn't what I wanted. And then COVID hit. Busy with looking at other options, possible new clubs, and just generally a little bit disenchanted with a lot of the area of the sport, how it's going, and sometimes agreeing with your comments. And as you know, sometimes I disagree with your comments, but I don't think that's a bad thing. If we don't have
I'd worry about
discussions,
you. I'd worry about you if you agreed with
right?
everything.
Yeah, if we don't have discussions, people shouldn't always agree. But if we can talk about things, then hopefully we help. If we can help people in the squash industry do it better, that's great. Whether it be coaches, people running clubs,
Yeah.
even the dreaded committee members that get talked about a lot.
Well, we do highlight some. I think you've seen we have highlighted some who are very good as well.
Absolutely.
And those ones that I've spoken to who are very good are open to questions. So
I think that's the key. If they're open to questions, you already know they're good.
Yeah.
That would be the general from everything I see online and experience and talking with friends in the industry. I think that's the key when they're not open or they're just trying to tell you. Those are the clubs that probably are not working very well, or in this day and age, they possibly are in trouble.
Yeah.
I think. Sorry.
Yeah, so no, we see that quite often. I think sometimes people who move from think they're successful in business think they're going to be successful in squash. It's another type of business where you're dealing with people having fun, so they don't necessarily take it seriously. So you have to take it seriously. Otherwise,
Yeah.
you end up being a clown or trying to be popular within your own league, or a popular president or chairman or whatever. You have to accept being unpopular sometimes to be able to get things done.
And I think that's hard. And I think one of the reasons why that's hard is also because those people don't have the experience in what I class as a very niche industry. Mm-hmm. It's when people ask you or even say, well, why do you want a new contract or a raise? And you go, well, look at how the place is doing. And from a business side, they go, okay, prove it, prove what you've done. And there are so many assets to what we do that you cannot put down on paper. You just have to open your eyes and look around.
Yeah.
But because they don't, or they haven't worked in the industry, it's a really difficult situation, I think, for a lot of clubs and a lot of pros, head pros, squash directors, whatever you want to call them.
Yeah.
I think it's very, very difficult. And unfortunately, it seems that so many of these clubs are disappearing.
Yeah.
And I am afraid, even the old club where I was at, I'm afraid for them. I don't want to see one squash club anywhere shut down, but I'm afraid that a lot of these committee-run places are bringing down the slow downfall of our sport.
Yeah,
it's maybe harsh to say. I think federations, they do get a lot of criticism, but federations don't really have much to do with the daily running of the sport and the growth of the sport. Mm-hmm. The clubs themselves, the people involved, I think that's where we need to try and educate, in my humble opinion. Well, or as some people would say, my strong opinions.
No, I agree with you. My local president seems his mission is to bring squash forward. Well, he can't do that because he doesn't know how to do it. That's my honest opinion, without being offensive. Now, I've been in the area for since 1991. I haven't seen him for 15 minutes.
Right.
I've seen him, neither the committee members at PSA events I've organized. All of a sudden, the guy says, "Come to me, my door's open." Well, I say, excuse everyone, but I say, F you. The door opens both ways, and I've been here 21 years, and why didn't you come to my events?
Right.
You know, and the same with all the guys in your club. Why haven't you come with a bloody minibus full of people to see Gregory Gaultier or Linku or all these things? The guy's talking about how he's gone off to Egypt to see the greats.
Yes.
And that grates me, if you excuse the pun, because these guys are all saying about how passionate they are about squash. They're quite often passionate about being attached to be seen with a selfie.
Yeah.
But it has to be in a nice place. It won't be in the shitty club I work in, because that's not sexy, you know. But the same thing goes with committee members. I haven't got a thing against him. I don't care about him, to be honest. The same thing goes about most of the chairmen in all the clubs in the area around me. I haven't seen them either. Right. So they then want to know why I'm not involved in the scene. Well, firstly, because it's my business and they don't know what they're talking about, which you know all about this. And my business, if I was to say to them, well, no, your business is to get more licenses sold. Your business is to facilitate the work of the professional, not tell him how to do it, because they haven't got a bloody clue.
Right. Now, one of the big areas on that, I feel, and speaking to a lot of colleagues, is so many clubs, because they struggle and they don't realize why they're struggling, they're really afraid to open themselves up to other clubs in the area.
Yeah.
It becomes me against them.
Yeah.
There's a good friend of mine in Ottawa talks about it. The clubs, they won't even speak to each other.
Yeah.
The area where I am in Canada, it's very much the same. And one of the best examples I could give, it becomes like a fear factor from
Yeah.
the committee members.
Yeah.
They think if we open up and try and work together, maybe some people might go to that other club because they prefer it. So I had a discussion with the president, and we were the only club in our area with a junior program.
Yeah.
And another gentleman was going to start a junior program at like a YMCA club.
That's fantastic.
And I was like, great. Our committee did everything they could not to help.
Yeah.
To the point when I had a conversation with the president, and he was actually nearly in panic, worried that it would be bad for us,
Yeah.
that we might lose some juniors that live closer by. And I stood there and I talked to him. I said, well, I think it's fantastic.
Yeah.
I said, I wish every other club would take a junior program. I said, and even if we lost a few juniors, I said, we wouldn't, but even if we do,
Yeah.
I said, long term, we're going to benefit. And I explained that because we were the premier club in the area, down the road, if these kids get good or they want, slightly better surroundings.
Yeah.
Every kid, as they get a bit older, or maybe as they become adults, is generally going to come to our club.
Yeah.
And the look on his face was complete and utter surprise.
Yeah.
And I still remember it. His answer was, oh, I'd never thought about it like that.
Yeah, but you
Right.
you and I don't really care that they come because we're doing our job properly. So we've got people. I don't actually want people to come from other club to my club. I don't want that.
No, it's not about taking people away.
Yeah.
But that's the feeling I get. There's a lot of fear factor amongst the individual clubs.
Yeah.
If they were all doing well, they wouldn't care because they'd all have waiting lists.
Yeah.
Right. So there's this fear factor of losing members and not understanding that they seem to all work as like individual clubs.
Yeah.
Presidents don't talk with presidents.
Yeah.
Pros might talk to each other, but they're not encouraged to have interaction between each other with the clubs.
Yeah.
And I see that certainly over in North America.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's an issue. I think it's a real issue.
We don't have that issue here.
No, it's less in Europe.
Yeah, we don't have that issue, and especially not in Switzerland. In my part, they've got more money than sense. So it's not a question about lose. There's a couple of clubs that are struggling, and their policy at the time, which goes into what you're talking about, their policy was to give a cheaper membership to someone who's taking a second membership. So if I was a member of your club, my club would say, if you come and join us, you get a cheaper member here because you're a member at the other place. What happens at renewals is you go to that other club. Now, what happened is everybody went to that club, and then there was no competition in the other clubs. And it's like you put too many rats in a cage. You get fighting and all sorts of problems. And then all those players went back to the original clubs or stopped playing. And now this club is like the worst club in my area, and it was a reference at the time. And they spoke to me, or one of the committee members spoke to me about coming and working for them. And literally I said, I'm not going to work for them as long as you're on the committee.
Right.
Okay. Because you're talking to me about going out and getting members from other clubs. I say, you're stupid. We want new members.
Yep.
We want kids. We want women. We want men. But we also want people in a category of age that we haven't got, 20 to 40.
Yeah.
I'm the local champion. I'm 56. It's ridiculous.
Right.
Absolutely ridiculous. So this is the concept that they don't understand the business side of squash, despite being successful in other businesses.
Right. And I said
new
to you,
members.
Yeah, I said to you, I think just the other day on a comment when you were talking about these things, there's such a difference when you work in the industry. That is your resume.
Yeah.
and you have a lot of the committee members and whatever, and like you said, they're IT and they're realtors and et cetera, et cetera. When they come on the committees, it's for a relatively short time. They're not spending their money, like you said.
Yeah.
But their idea of long term is a year.
Yeah.
It's all about, am I going to look good while I'm on the board?
Yeah.
And to me, I went into this club and I was like, wow, this is not great. This is a 5-year plan.
Yeah.
To start. 5-year wouldn't be the finish. It's to start. And it's really difficult for experienced people in those situations to actually get the buy-in from these ever-changing committees.
Yeah.
You might get a good one and you're doing well. And then half of them, disappear off the committee. You get new people in, and all of a sudden you've nearly got to start with scratch from them with them.
We've got never-ending committees here. It's a different problem,
Right.
Never-ending.
So it's a very unusual situation, and it is hard. I wondered. I knew in North America that I saw so many friends, colleagues, and people were, 2 to 4 years in one club was good.
Right.
And I couldn't get my head around that.
Yeah.
From being in Europe and certainly being 18 years in one club.
Yeah.
And to see, what's this merry-go-round? Aren't they good enough? Don't they know what they're doing? That was my honest opinion.
Yeah.
And then coming over here and then also seeing what I had to deal with, but also other friends who are over here. And now I get it.
Yeah.
It is this continual changing, generally every 2 to 4 years. And it's because they either are no longer welcome.
Yeah.
Because, like you allude to, I can't understand the business situation of realtors, IT people thinking they can tell a professional in their industry how to do things.
Mm-hmm.
And not being willing to listen to the professional. I find it the most bizarre business model that I've probably ever experienced in our industry. And I think that's very much the case in North America. There will be some great places.
Yeah.
But the places that are having a real quick turnover of head pros, squash directors,
yeah,
I think they need to look at their books and they need to look at how their club is going, because very few of them, from what I'm seeing, are actually growing or succeeding. They're struggling, and it's getting harder.
Yeah.
Because what is it Einstein says? Keep doing the same thing over and over again, expecting a different result is a sign of insanity.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I think what you were saying earlier is like, so if you or I change, even if we change within our to another sport, I think we're going to go in and shut up and ask questions and listen. So, for example, if I run a ski camp, I started running ski camps. I'm not a skier. I do cross-country skiing. I know nothing about skiing, how long it takes to get the boots on. The first ski camp I did was so amazingly bad. But the kids didn't know it because it was great fun. Okay.
Right.
But I took back, and I was ashamed of my work, but I got away with it.
Yeah.
And and I shut up and I went to see the ski school. Said, tell me what I did wrong. I didn't go into the ski school and say, do this and this is how it should be done,
Right. It's because you're a professional coach.
Yeah.
It's your resume.
Yeah.
Somebody's trying to tell you how to build a squash school or a camp that sits in an office behind a computer working IT.
Yeah.
It's bizarre to me. For the people that know me, they know I'm a pretty good golfer, so like scratch golfer, and I played some pro events, and I did my teaching courses in Holland. And the same thing as you, like I had a strong background in sport coaching, but when I started with golf, obviously I understood the fundamentals of a swing and everything, but I knew nothing.
Yeah.
And my mentor, bloke called Kieran Quatermain, I was just asking all the time, why did you do that? What was the reason for that? If I want to get this, what do I have to do?
Yeah.
And he thought it was great. But to me, it was just normal to be asking the person that is the professional, not me telling him. It would be like me coming in with him having played on the European tour and coaching for years, and me going, no, you're doing it wrong, Kieran.
Yeah.
I've got 1 month of experience, and I know better than you.
Yeah.
He probably would have he was a big guy. He probably would have just picked me up, Connor, and just thrown me out the parking lot.
Of course, yeah. But I mean, also a lot of these guys. I mean, I've given my time, as you give your time we've got a ticket as only being interested in money. That's a very convenient thing to say about us. Whereas if
Yes.
I know I can speak to you, and if I've got a problem, I can ring you like lots of guys say, hey, Jay, can you help me with this?
Yeah.
Just as a freaking local president could ring me and say, what's wrong with this? Instead of giving out free coaching, which makes it difficult for me in my center, because they've decided to give a price for courts, which is above or below my price that I'm giving for courts, which then means they're saying, let's say I pay nothing for the court because it's members, and they're prepared to pay 20 to the court owner. The court owner is going to say, hey, hang on a minute. Connor's been ripping us off for all these years.
Yeah.
But you don't, so you have to get the person who's going to provide the service to be in agreement with the service you're going to try and get provided. And this is what they do. I mean, they will then say, oh, we got 150 juniors into squash. Yeah. Okay. How many stayed? It's like the other thing is they don't understand is there's different types of coaches within squash. So with all due respect to you, I'm not saying this is the case, you might be crap with juniors.
Yep.
So if I give you money for juniors, you're going to put them all off. You hate juniors.
Yep.
I think I'm brilliant with juniors.
Right.
But I've never coached really elite players. So you're not going to give me the elite players. Probably you've done it more than I have.
Right. But yet, the federation, if you were in with the right person, you might get the money to go and do the elite Swiss juniors. Right. You're absolutely right. I know coaches that they don't even know how to speak to children.
Yeah.
Right. I know some coaches that, like you say, give them a beginner and they don't know what to say to them. Yeah. Give them somebody that's already on the regional squads or on the verge of national squads, and they're brilliant. So you're absolutely right. Understanding that, there aren't many coaches out there that are fantastic with, all the different levels.
Yeah.
But there are some that shouldn't be anywhere near juniors.
Yeah.
And there are some that are trying to coach elite players who shouldn't be anywhere near elite players.
The other thing with juniors, if you want to get kids into squash, so you create this program, which I think it had to be thought about a hell of a lot more by people who know the domain, if you like. But then you have to think later, okay, I'm going to get 20 kids in that club, free coaching, but we haven't asked them if they can carry on to Tuesday night training sessions. None of them can do it on Tuesday night. Or in that particular club, there's no coach normally. Or the team members there are horrible to kids, which is the case in some of the clubs where I work. So I would rather no kid got introduced to squash than he gets a bad introduction to squash.
Yeah.
So that they don't have a bad opinion of squash. So I've had kids who, I think you're probably the same. They've come to you, one girl this year, and she said, oh, Connor, this is the only sport I've done more than 6 months. I've been doing it with you for 18 months.
Right.
Because I make her feel comfortable, because I don't go into pushing her to be a champion, and she wants to improve, Yeah. And they've done tennis where the guy, there's 6 people behind, the coach hits one ball, the one kid hits one ball, the others 5 are picking their nose and pushing each other, and they turn around, they've done that group type of coaching. Whereas I've got them all moving, whether you agree or not, with balls being over the floor is another thing, but that's the topic we had fun over.
Yep.
But that's fine. That's fine. But the most important thing is that the kids do not have a bad experience.
Yeah, and again, with a lot of the committees or clubs or federations, and a lot of federations, it's older people.
Yeah.
They've also, people have got to remember that the times have changed.
Yeah.
We are not in the 80s and 90s anymore. Drill sergeant coaching methods, they still work as long as you hardly want to have any clientele.
They're working certain
Because,
cultures still, but not in the cultures we're living in.
No, and the culture of nowadays, whether you agree with it or not, that no kid fails at anything anymore. They get a prize for everything. Parents want to be best friends with their kids. What that ends up being is, if the kid isn't having fun, they're going to want to switch. They want to go to something else. If they're not enjoying it, the days of the dad going, suck it up. So what? You got told off. You've got to work harder. All this.
Yeah.
Those days are gone.
Yeah.
And federations and all the committees and things like that, people have to realize that. I've been coaching since I was 11, 12, because of my mum or dad, helping them out with beginners and stuff. So it's been 30, 35, 36 years. And the changes that you'll have experienced, that you'll have had to have gone through in how you deal with juniors in particular, is unbelievable.
Yeah.
I mean, it's compared now to how I was taught by Bomber Harris on the England national squads. I don't know if you remember the name Bomber Harris.
Yeah, sure.
My God, he was a drill sergeant.
Yeah.
He was a drill sergeant, I believe, from the Navy,
the Royal Air Force. No,
the Royal Air Force, right?
Yeah.
So he was a drill sergeant. If you did that with kids now, they'd all go home crying and you'd never see them again.
Exactly.
Right?
No, it's changed. It's changed.
Yeah, so it's changed a lot, and keeping kids involved. I do feel that the kids just wanting to be accepted and wanting to have fun is the most important thing. And if anybody's worried about elite levels are really simple. It's a numbers game.
Yeah.
Just look at Egypt.
Yeah.
Nothing. You can talk about the levels of coaching and clubs and everything, but it's purely a numbers game.
Yeah.
It's pretty much the most popular sport in Egypt. So they get the pick of the bunch when it comes to athletes. Everybody wants to play squash. So their numbers are crazy. Yeah. So you could have 5,000 juniors playing in one club, which means your percentage chance of getting 4 or 5 elite, and I mean elite juniors, is massive. If you've only got 10 juniors in your club, I'd say if you get 1 elite junior, you're an amazing coach.
Shall I tell you what I think has not been mentioned as the big difference in Egypt is the coaches are respected.
Massively.
They're not respected in Europe. It's like you're a joke, you earn money from coaching.
I was about to say, how often have you heard, when you say what you do, how often have you had and what do you do for your real job? How many times have you had that over the years?
I've had quite a few. Less these days.
Yeah. People say, well, what do you do? I'm a squash coach.
Yeah.
Oh, and what do you do for your other job?
Yeah.
And you're like, what? No.
I'll tell you another one is it still that Khan fellow? Yeah.
Oh.
The guy's been living he's 120 years old,
Right.
The original Khan guy.
I get a lot of messages from everybody that's coached one of the Khans in Pakistan wanting a job. They've all coached them.
Yeah.
So, one thing about go very quickly on that, when it's also the false impression, the false idea people easily get, right? You talk to people that don't know much about squash or even play it, and they go, oh, Pakistan used to rule the world in squash. And if you actually look at it, you pretty much went, actually, they just happen to have 2 of the best players in history for 20 years in a row.
Yeah.
And they actually didn't rule the world like Egypt are doing. they just had the number one in the world for 20 years in a row.
Yeah, yeah.
Right.
Also at that time, what people don't like hearing is it was just England, Australia, New Zealand, Pakistan. That was a couple of guys floating from different countries. It was so limited. On the tour, I didn't do the tour very much, but I mean, it was infiltrated with the Aussies and English, and there weren't French and
well, it was the colonies, wasn't it?
Yeah,
it was the colonies.
It was very different. Now it's much nicer because it hasn't got just a few nations. It's more multinational, which is
that's
nice.
right. I mean, my stepson and and his girlfriend, they're like I say, they're starting out on their PSA adventure, and literally today, my stepson's looking, and there's 900 men on the world ranking list, right? Which is a crazy number.
Yeah.
The problem you've got, from that side, federations as well, is that the problem is if you're outside the top 250 in the world, it's nearly pointless being on the world ranking because you can't get into a tournament.
Yeah, exactly. Well, the funny thing with COVID is that's changed because this ridiculous situation with PSA where no locals can get into the main draw if they're not because there's no qualification draw. This has changed now with COVID. So if you look at the circuit, there's tournaments in Germany just with German players. There's French tournaments with French players, Czech with Czech and Polish players. This is done actually good for squash because there is a sort of conspiracy to keep the English well ranked. And you and I are both English, but I'll say it. There seems to be, I'll retract that. There seems to be a conspiracy with the way the draws are done, with this funny thing where you've got unranked players here, and then you got the number 1 and the number 9 playing in the first round. It's and all those lower ranked players are likely to be English now.
Well, I'm not sure about that one. It's at the end of the day, it is a professional organization, and draws are done. If you use tournament software now and you put all the names in.
No, I'm not saying they're cheating with that. I'm saying just the system is going to help that. Yeah, I'm not saying they're arranging for certain players to play each other as such.
Right.
I'm just saying, no, I'm not saying that.
Right.
But the system's such where, that you're going to get the number 1 who'll play the number 9 in their first match. That's just not normal, And
no, and well, that was, when they, a few years ago, they went from 16 seeds in the first round and they went to 8 seeds.
Yeah.
And actually the argument behind that is that the tournaments were too predictable.
Yeah.
So if you look back on why that was, and
because the Egyptians are too strong. That's why.
No, well, I mean, it started even before that, and it was just there was virtually no upsets in the first round or even the second round. And actually, by going to 8 seeds in the men's, it did create what you just said. You could suddenly get this number 5 in the world against the number 9 in the world in the first round, if the draw just happened to come out like that, which is actually good for the sport.
Yeah,
it's good that you can have that. It's unusual because you don't have it in any other sport. Like the top 16 or 32 always get protected.
I think you can do it now. I think the tour is strong enough that you can put it back to 16 seeds and you're going to get shocks, but only if you don't let the better players have a bye. I don't think there should be buys in there. That's my way.
Right.
We're going off track here, so
yeah,
our passion is taking us off to the competitive side. So going back to federations and systems, we spoke a bit earlier. I think where they have mostly failed is, like, you were in Holland, I was in Belgium, I was in Italy. There were lots and lots and lots of players, and the federations are funded by the number of players who actually have licenses.
Yes.
So in Holland, I mean, the squash was booming, but there were so few people with licenses.
Correct.
So you lose funding. Now the federations didn't market it so that everyone would buy a license, and there's still, even my local federation hasn't got a target for the number of licenses. I said they should have a target. If you're at 500 licenses, well, that's not enough.
Yeah.
I as a squash business person. I said, no, 500 isn't enough. That just represents X number of people in the club, just the team players. I want more people playing competition. Internal competition counts
Yeah.
to federal ranking, etc., etc.
Yeah.
So what's your take on that?
That's probably like the biggest, the next biggest step is that internal box pools, internal ladders, whatever you want to call them, you want to play in them, you have to be a member of a federation, because that's where the largest number of people in clubs are playing in.
Yeah.
And that would boost the federation numbers, I think, astronomically in a heartbeat.
Yeah.
You know, and even if you had to sell it to those people, look, you know, you say to them, it's going to cost you $50 for the year to play in your internal leagues.
Yep.
Even though
they'll pay it. It's a service.
They'll pay it, but even if you know it's only costing them 40 because you've got to give $10 to the federation for their membership.
Yeah.
Again, they don't even need to know. We had hundreds of people playing in Holland in the internal box pools, and you know, maybe a third of them also played league squash.
Yeah.
So that meant 2/3 of them were not members of the federation.
Yeah.
There was a couple of good guys worked at the federation over the years. I got on very well with Mark Velkamp, was pretty good. But they had for years the same type of person taking over the role.
Yeah.
And I must say, Holland have made a great move. They've just employed as the new director for the Dutch Federation, Tom Lucas.
Right.
And I know I'm getting old when I say I knew Tom when he was a tiny little boy.
Right.
Because he's only, I mean, that's scary. He's only, I think, maybe 26.
Right.
And he is the new director of the Dutch Federation.
Right. Perfect.
And he started off with, I don't know if you know Mark de Sluis, and I believe it was Guido Plume. Even they started off with a junior. They made a junior company where it was only about putting on fun junior tournaments at different clubs.
Yeah.
And when these three guys started it, they were only like 17,
18,
19. And it was called TMG from their first names.
Right.
And they did more as a small group of young guys for Dutch junior squash in the space of a few years than the federations had done.
Are they on this forum? I want you to put them on this forum, man.
I would imagine they might be. Tom Lucas, he got the job, 26, Dutch director of the Squash Federation, young, in touch with juniors, in touch with what the sport needs. And I tell you, along with a few other people, Dutch junior squash seems to be doing really, really well.
Yeah.
And a lot of countries should possibly look at the Dutch and what they took a bold move, right, to put a 26-year-old in charge of the federation.
Send me his details later. It'd be interesting.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Can you imagine how many countries do you think are going to put a 26-year-old in the hot seat?
You know, I have a kid. He's a black kid, and he's short, and he's in Switzerland. There's not many black kids, not many black people. It's fairly passive racism here. There's not too much, but you can get on, but it's very passive. Couldn't get a job. Yeah. He's got a name that you can hardly pronounce. Couldn't get a job. Right. I knew him personally. Fantastic kid, adult now. And I said, I went to him. I said, what are you doing in summer? He said, I can't get a job. I said, you've got a job. He said, what do you mean? You're my assistant on my summer camps. What do you mean?
Right.
You've already been helping me 2 years. So let me ask you a question. He said, oh, thank you for the opportunity. So I said, well, it's equal opportunities, man. It's probably a better opportunity for me than it is for you. Now that kid, I could leave him to run my camps. And there's a lot of responsibility driving kids around, doing things, looking after stuff. I could leave that kid, man now, to run my camps at 24. And all the kids I work with in my clubs where I work, well, the majority of them have that mindset, have that way of challenging, and I encourage it. So they will
Yep.
say, one girl wrote, well, Switzerland isn't really for equal opportunities for squash. There's no tournaments for women. And I said, well, yeah, you're right. And I said, well, what do you want to do about it? He said, oh, I'm going to go to America, but I'm going to carry on playing. And I think about this and thanks so much, So
Right.
I think there's a lot of, I'm inspired by the younger generation, guys of my age but we stay young because we're with these kids. I think
Yeah.
that's, it
My,
helps us.
I said to you, my stepson, he's 20 and his girlfriend, and not only are they keeping me young, they made me realize that I'm not done with this game that I absolutely love. They
No.
brought me back from the cusp, and if everything goes the way I hope in the next year or two, I want those two as my assistants, and just because their generation, you need their generation involved with the kids coming up, their enthusiasm, their passion. It's that generation. If they're involved in sports, there's a lot of their generation. They get a lot of criticism. They get a lot of criticism about not being driven, not being motivated, being lazy, blah blah blah. If they're involved,
Jay,
sport,
I did my camps outside during COVID. I did my squash training outside. All the kids showed up. They all showed up. They showed up because I cared.
Yep.
Okay. It was -2. I only cancelled if it was raining. If it was cold, even if it was snowing, we did it. All those kids showed up. Okay. Now, for the team guys around here, the slightest discomfort, oh no, we're gods and we've been playing in the team for so many years and we want this and we want that, we want this. Those kids are coming to me. If I ask them for anything, they'll do it for me, And generally what I'm hoping is that they'll move into committee roles, because we're not against committees as such, but we want committees who ask questions.
Committees that ask questions and are not afraid to move with the times. I think that's it. I think that's the big one. Once the problem in some clubs is you might get young people in onto the committees, but then they get very much influenced by what's gone on before them.
Yeah, of course.
Right.
Of course.
Yeah.
But they I mean, their schooling is such, they have projects that I've seen with their work. It's very interesting. They're not pushovers.
No, and that's where I still believe sport is great for kids. It installs beliefs and traits that you only get through playing sport. Like having seen my stepson and Jaden and his girlfriend Catherine. We built like a home gym downstairs in a basement room, did it all up, and seeing what they've done the last year, I have nothing but respect for them, Connor. They have worked so hard. The motivational side must have been a nightmare. No squash clubs open, no PSA events coming, and they probably, I think this actually might do them the world of good. They are so strong and so fit, and every day they've been working out, and in the good weather they're going out running, using the resistant bands, knowing that they couldn't play squash. And so I know there's a lot of lazy kids out there now, but the ones that you get involved in any sport, they're a good bunch.
Well, there's this thing about lazy kids. So I mean, I had a kid come along. I had a lesson with him tonight. He's been playing like 3 years. The first lesson he came along is like looking at me, sulky, 12-year-old, whatever. He didn't want to hold the racket, as I told him, and I don't annoy the kids. If they want to hold the racket by the top by the frame, they can hold it by the frame if they want to, because they're going to end up getting fed up with that and hold it by the handle. So you don't say no. So he said, can I serve like this way? And I'm looking at the back wall. So he wanted to face the back wall and serve overarm behind himself. I said, yeah, you do whatever you want. I came out of there, and and the team guys were watching, and they said to me, "What the hell's that kid doing? See how stupid he is."
Right.
So
Yeah.
as you can see, I don't what's the word, mash my words. So I
Yeah.
said, well, you guys have been playing for 20 years and you're still crap.
Right.
Give this kid some slack. Right.
Yeah.
If he wants to play between his legs, the very fact that he comes back, the most important thing is that kid comes back for a second lesson, you know. So you got
Yeah.
all this judgment on coaches as well, because sometimes if you see my coaching, you think I'm crazy, you know.
Yeah, and you know, I am not the style of coach. I'm not going to be doing a lot of the stuff you're doing.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And you know, we've had that talk about you do whatever you want for fun.
Yep.
Right. I could think that was dangerous and you disagree. That's fine.
Yeah, but we're still talking. I mean, no one.
We're still talking.
It might get heated or whatever, but that's fine.
Yeah, I love my kids to have fun.
Yeah.
And I also, you know, it's nearly demanded as well.
Yeah.
In the style of clubs over here, you know, they're expected to get better.
Yeah.
And have fun. You know, it's a very unusual scenario. You've got to make sure they have fun to keep them coming back.
Yeah.
But in North America, parents are expecting results. Yeah. Got to have results, you know. Yeah. So it really pushes you to improve yourself even at this late stage in life of coaching.
Yeah,
to try and get that balance of making sure they're having fun, but at the end of the day, nearly to keep your job.
Yeah.
To make sure that they're also improving.
Yeah.
It's a very, very unusual situation.
Yeah, I mean, we've discussed this. This is another subject which gets heated, where I say that this drive for overperformance. I mean, a kid comes and sees me. The last thing I want to do is tell him to start off by telling him what to do. He gets that all his bloody life from parents, from schools. They've got 20 kilograms on their back. They go to school over too many hours to learn a load of shit sometimes, you know, that they never use. So the last thing I want to do is start off by saying you must do this, you know. So
I tend to, the way I go around that now, and certainly in North America, is you get the kids on the court and I basically go, look, I love having fun. We'll have loads of fun. I have 2 rules and these are non-negotiable.
Mm-hmm.
And that is, like, we'll have no bad language,
mm-hmm.
right? And when I say stop, everybody stops moving.
Yeah.
And that's so that, you know, when you see the racket about to be swung and he's about to decapitate some poor kid, right? Because over in North America, that's it. You'll be living on the street because you'll be sued.
Yeah.
That, you know, those 2 rules, right? There'll be no disrespect, no bad language. And also when I say stop, everybody stops.
Yeah.
And if you can stick with those rules, the rest is pretty much open.
Yeah. But they'll improve anyway if they want to improve. When they get to a stage, I've got some kids, like, they just haven't improved for such a long time, and then all of a sudden, boom, you know.
Yep.
And I had kids that had been having lessons for 3 years, 2 or 3 times a week. He just didn't improve.
Right.
He didn't really want to, you know.
Right.
So I go about it professionally, trying to get him. I don't necessarily get him to improve, well, of course, but to have fun, to get.
Yep.
And all of a sudden, just that. He's got to that age, like cheese has matured or wine. It's all of a sudden he's got to that stage where it just all clicks.
Yeah.
You know? But if you've been telling him 50,000 times, hit the ball like this, hit the ball like that, because he doesn't want to. Yeah.
I think the best compliment I think I've ever had, certainly over here with kids, is when you suddenly get a text from one of the kids, girl in the situation, needing help because she's getting badly bullied.
Yeah.
Or the kid is struggling with his English or math homework.
Yeah.
And the teacher doesn't get him.
Yeah.
And because I've got a brain, they come to me and I explain it in a different way. Or they come to me and ask me for that's the name. Girl advice. Girl advice. Right?
I love those ones.
Right. But the fact and I had this conversation with one of the parents. It was a serious problem. They were kind of nearly upset that their child came to me about it.
Yeah, of course
And
they
I said,
would.
well, I said, but better that they're coming to me than not coming to anybody at all.
Yeah, yeah.
Right.
So that's sort of human. I mean, I personally, as a parent, I'd be happy that you were there, but not everyone
Right.
takes that way. Not everyone
Right.
takes that way.
And
But
when you talk about it, and then, you know, and that's good. So those are the kind of compliments I look for.
Yeah.
I have this tiny little girl, and she's like, you know, up to just above my knees, and
Yeah.
and she didn't want to play squash, and now she comes running in, and she has a tutu on, because then she likes to run around the court with her tutu on, and then
Right.
I always get a hug and a kiss at the end of it.
Yeah.
And it doesn't matter how tired or whatever you might be, when that happens, you go away, you go home with a smile on your face.
Yeah, it gives you
Because
energy back, doesn't it?
it gives you energy.
Yeah.
And I love that side of it. And this is a big one. I think that a lot of coaches are gonna maybe appreciate this one. One of the biggest insults that coaches receive at some point from a lot of committee members is when they accuse them of being an elite coach. An elite coach, they're insinuating that you're only interested in the best players.
Yeah.
But yet, for a lot of those coaches, they got to that club and there were no good players.
Yeah.
So I'm wondering, and I want to put out there to those people, do you understand where elite players come from?
Mm-hmm.
They come from beginners.
Yeah.
And you should not be criticizing a coach at your club, any club, for creating some elite players from total beginners.
Yeah.
And what happens at those clubs is those elite players are more visual because they're there all the time.
Yeah.
You obviously spend a lot of time with them. And then the accusations come that you're only focusing on elite players.
Yeah.
And normally there's like 2 or 3 elite players in a club if you're lucky.
Yeah.
So if you only focused on 2 or 3 elite players, Mr. Committees, not going to be doing much work, are you?
No.
So elite, to me, I don't like, you use it and a lot of people do, and they talk about elite coaching or elite coaches. I don't like that wording.
Yeah.
To me, an elite coach is somebody that can do everything.
Yeah.
If you want to talk
I'm
about,
not sure. To be honest, I'm not sure there are any elite coaches in that case. I'm really not sure there are that can that can go across the board. Boys, girls, women, men, veterans, veteran men, veteran women, left-handed, right-handed. I don't think there's one elite coach in the world who can do all that. There's always be someone who'll be better at some of those things.
Exactly.
So an elite coach, let's say I'm an elite coach at juniors.
Right.
I don't produce any top players from juniors. It all depends what your perspective is.
Yes. So what I would like to hear people talking about when they talk about that, make sure that people are talking about high performance.
Yeah.
If they want to say this person is only interested or is only good with the best level of players.
Yeah.
Because to me, an elite coach or an elite pro is somebody that is incredibly capable at doing numerous things in a club.
Yeah.
And it's not about the level of coaching, it's about you being able to run a pro shop, run events.
Now you're talking about the club pro. That's a sort of like different, that doesn't exist really much anymore, or is existing less and less. The club pro with the retainer, that's how it used to be. Who does everything in the club. That doesn't exist so much.
In North America, it's still the main thing.
In Europe, in England's another story. I can't speak 100% for England because I've been out of it so long, but I think that still exists. But in mainland Europe, I mean, forget it. No,
there's not many. There's really not.
And this is what I can't understand, because if I've worked in clubs, let's say I'm a business person and you come to a club and you're going to say, I'm going to want money to run your squash program. I say, well, why? And you'll say, well, I'm going to get you 200 more members. Now, all of a sudden,
Yeah.
okay. But a lot of people don't work on that aspect. They're going to say, well, I'm going to bring you on more players. And when you say players, as a coach, it often means team players. Now, as a club owner, I don't give a damn about team players. That's not true, 100% true. Okay. I don't give a damn about picking all the club players from other teams just to say that I have the best team in the league, for example.
Right.
I
Yeah.
don't give a damn about taking the best player who's an idiot from another club just so he plays at my club. I care about the weakest player in my club up until the strongest.
Yeah.
So you or I walk into a club and we say, well, okay, well, we're going to give you, how many members you got? 50. What, for 4 courts? Within 2 years, you'll have 400
Right.
or 500. I want this much. And I'll put my head on a block. I want it progressively. So when I reach these targets, this is what I want.
Yep.
Now, that doesn't exist. There aren't many coaches like that anymore who are capable of doing that.
No, I think that sort of knowledge or that experience in the industry is a dying breed for sure. Also, just because it's become probably more and more difficult to sell that to the clubs.
Yeah,
it is a tough one. It's what you've spoken about very often is, and I agree entirely with you. I don't understand how clubs expect to be doing well when they don't have a professional driving force in the club. They're scrimping and saving.
yeah.
And isn't it like any business, or what is it? You got to speculate to accumulate.
Yeah.
And understanding that, okay, make do without upgrading your furniture or your computer IT program in the club for a year or two, and pay that money to a qualified professional that is capable of doing what you're saying. They feel as though I think club owners or committees, they think it's a waste of money. It's not going to work, even though they have no clue about how it works.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, 100%. And this is something I never understand, because I talk about David Lloyd centers, where you know who they are because you're from England, Holmes Place, all these groups, Virgin, what if they still exist? And I say, well, if I had a squash club and they had a business nearby me, I'd put my place very close to them, because I know all their weak points.
Yeah.
But they have salespeople.
Yes.
But I've worked inside those clubs, so I know their weak points. The weak point is they don't give a shit about, a lot of those places don't give a shit about the members.
Yeah.
You and I, if I want to spend time with members, I don't mind them not liking me because I make something unpopular decision.
Yeah.
But I don't want members who don't respect me,
Right.
Or it's just a number coming in. So I want the people, when I go into a club, I know most people, So this I never understand about squash clubs is you're a sales business.
Yes, but you get, as well, in Europe as well, but certainly North America, there's this idea that they expect you as the head pro or general manager or whatever, they expect you that everybody is going to like you.
Yeah.
And I've even at my old place, I said, if I hit a 70% of people really liking me, I'm doing a damn good job. I said, if I actually go higher and start getting up to 90 and 95 and everybody going, Jay's great, I am doing a terrible job.
Yeah.
All it means is
you're giving them everything that they want, not what the club should give them. Yeah.
Yeah. And that idea of placating members in member-owned clubs is a terrible scenario for our sport.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, that is nearly what is expected. And I think the good pros is probably why they move on every few years, because they don't do it.
Yeah.
And like I say, there was one businessman at a tournament at the club, very big businessman in this area, well known, and he got it. He turned to me and he goes, "Must be difficult." He says, "You know, you change a lot." He says, what do you work on? If you get 60, 70, 75% of people like you, you're doing brilliant, aren't you? And I went, "John, you're absolutely spot on." And he was the only person in 5 years that ever had that conversation with me.
Yeah.
He understood that to actually improve things, there are going to be some old boys, there's going to be a small group of people that are going to go, "I hate that guy," because you're not doing what they want all the time.
They
And
can't
it's the
have
very
10 courts on the trot.
right, yeah, or no, you can't have that court every day at the same time, or no, sorry, you can't bring numerous people into the club to just drink beer and have a sauna with because it's a member-owned club, you know. And it's a very tricky one. Certainly, North America, they're so customer orientated, but they don't quite grasp that understanding. A lot of member-owned clubs, they have this feeling that a member-owned club means that they can do anything they want, when a member-owned club has to answer to just as many laws and regulations as any other club. And unfortunately, when you get the volunteer committees, you've then got the added problem that very often that person who's sitting on the committee is friends with a few of those people.
Yeah, of course.
And they don't want to piss their friends off.
Yeah.
Right. So then they start placating them, and then it's a fun environment. It is fun.
Well, I think you, like I mean, I don't care if I have to do a job, I do a job. So I've had to change a booking system where I've had 30 people in a room. And I started off by saying, well, most of you in this room are why I have to change the booking system. So if you want me to name those in the room, there was silence.
Right.
And I changed the booking system. And you know, the thing about booking systems is it used to be like you ring on 9 o'clock on Monday for next Monday.
Yeah.
So everybody's ringing all day. The first thing that is, if you want to play at 9 o'clock, you ring at 9 o'clock. If you want to play at 10 o'clock, you ring from 10 o'clock, etc. So you staggered the calls. Then people were ringing for doubles. So all 4 members were ringing for a doubles court. They were taking 4 courts, man.
Right.
So, and they weren't like cancelling afterwards. They weren't checking. So all of a sudden, within 1 minute, you've got all the courts gone.
Yeah.
Now you're a new member. You're thinking, hey, every time I call up, that must be that Jay guy and all his buddies, which is understandable.
Yeah.
And then you see the courts all free. You think, what's going on? So these are the sort of things in clubs, and that kills a club.
It does. It does.
But when you look at it and you sort the booking system out and you do it properly, everybody gets a call. And you say to the older members, look, you're here all bloody morning. Why play at 10 o'clock when everyone wants it at 10 o'clock? You're here till 1 o'clock.
Yeah. You know? Please play it at 11:30, 12.
Yeah, exactly. Right? And in the end, they sort of like, yeah, okay.
Yeah. No, they will. People will do it if you ask. But the problem with a lot of the committees is they don't even dare to go against their buddies at the club.
Yeah.
That's a big problem.
Yeah.
Can you believe an issue? This one will make you laugh. One of the reasons a president gave that they had a problem with me at my old club, and he actually said this to a few members, Jay was very difficult to work with because he was so honest and he had an incredibly high level of integrity.
Yeah.
And he used that as a reason. And apparently a couple of members just couldn't believe what they were hearing.
Yeah.
So if I get accused that you don't want me to work there because I'm incredibly honest and I have a high level of integrity.
Yeah.
I can live with that, Connor.
Yeah, no, of course.
I can live with that. I can really live with that, you know. So it's been a good chat, and I hope there are some things that, that hit home with people.
Yeah. Well, the forum is there to discuss. I like it when more people come on and enter things, so people can comment on this. They can even
Yes.
comment badly about you or I. It doesn't matter. That's a comment. As long as it's respectful,
Yeah,
we're fine with it.
that's the key. You know,
Yeah.
there'll be people disagree, and there's different models, and like you've probably realized as well, you know, when you're in, if somebody's in Europe and they're commenting on things generally, you know, then all of a sudden some people in North America take offense to it because systems are different in different countries and certainly on different continents.
Yeah.
I think what people have to remember is when you're putting out all that stuff, and like we've said, some of it I want to strangle you as well.
Yeah.
But at the
You
end
know,
of the day,
sometimes that's the aim, Jay. Yeah.
exactly, I
It
know
gets
that. I
people talking.
understand that.
Yeah.
It gets people talking, and at the end of the day, everybody that's on like a squash site or a squash forum, surely it means that they have an interest and a love of this amazing game.
Yeah, for sure. I'm
So
gonna have to leave you with that because I have to let the dog out. Otherwise, I have to clear up something.
Me too. I
So
will
listen,
take the dog.
I just want to say your stepson is very lucky. You seem to be very attached to him.
Yeah,
That's
he's.
very nice.
It can be a difficult relationship sometimes, stepson and a new dad. But I have to say, I got lucky.
Yeah.
I got a good one.
Yeah,
Or maybe he
did
got a
too, I
good one
think
as
so.
well. You know.
So take care of yourself, and
Take care,
we'll talk
and
soon.
we will see each other on the forum, Connor.
Okay, take care.
All right.